Hello.
Y'all good?
You're okay?
You don't want me to take that?
No, I mean. I'm so happy to be here. I'm really jealous that I wasn't here the whole quarter. I love James. I now teach full-time over at LCU. I'm a chemistry teacher over there. But for several years, I was a regular here because I got to stay home with my 3 boys as they were little. And so ladies Bible class was a dear place to me. I am in the Hall of Fame of faith, so I feel pretty unworthy to be up here on such a topic. Okay, I have some things on screen for you. I do love James. I've always loved James. Here's one of the reasons. They're brothers. Jesus and James are brothers. They were fighting over the toothpaste and fighting over the chores and fighting over who gets to sit where in the wagon. That's what my boys did as brothers growing up. So they must have kind of thought the same, had some of the same habits and ideas. And one of those habits and ideas I kind of see similar for them is that Jesus taught us in these stories in memorable, practical ways. And James gave us this book with these practical, memorable snippets. I like to listen to podcasts. So he was giving us these little podcasts. He was giving us these little sermonettes. So I like to teach that way too. I like to keep my students' attention span and try to keep things short and memorable. But my topic that I was assigned and given in James 5, 1 through 12 is anything but short and practical, easy, memorable things. Okay, I have had some of my journey with suffering and with grief, and it was anything but short and practical. It was more like this bag. Did you see me bring my big bag? I got some stuff in it. Okay, and for part of my talk, I'm gonna carry that bag. Okay, it's a heavy bag. I started life with this woman, Carol Dahlstrom, and my bag was not like this, was not this heavy. It was more like it was filled with cotton candy. Through the lottery, the luck of the draw of life, my story starts without much suffering. My chance and my love, I just won the lottery. I have great parents, great teaching, great community. I got the idea, I was a rule follower kind of kid. I got the idea that my performance led to great blessings. That worked out for me a lot. That God's plan for good living would lead to happy days and a full heart. The unspoken message was that following his pattern for life would lead to good stuff. Until it didn't. And there were little things along my life, but about 12 years ago, a really big thing came into my family's life, and what I've got in here to represent that, if you can hear them clanging around in there, is a brick. 12 years ago, a tragedy happened involving my parents and my brother, and the loss of Soren, a ray of sunshine, 9 years old. That's not my story to tell. A couple years ago, another tragedy hit my husband's family, his brother and his wife. And those bricks are heavy in that bag. Those are not even directly my own husband and kids, but to watch the suffering of somebody you love so dearly has been my own grief journey. Both of those tragedies were preceded by prayers and pleading and wisdom seeking. But following his pattern did not lead to good stuff. You may have bricks in your bag. Lots of us were not loved like we should have been when we were young, and we're still living with those bricks. Maybe you're not loved like you should be right now, and that's a brick in your bag. Maybe you've been the one to hurt others or hurt yourself, and it's hard to forgive yourself for that. Maybe you've lost someone that should still be here. There's an empty chair. There's an empty closet. Maybe you have a broken relationship or relationships. Maybe life just isn't like the plan. Maybe that's a big loss that's happened. Maybe that's a bunch of little things, and that's just not the plan. And you find yourself lost or stuck because of that. That last one, that control thing, is my own personal brick that I want things to go well. I want my family to be happy. I want my kids to be happy, and trying to control that is not good for relationships and hasn't been good for relationships. Oh, thanks.
We're just, there you go.
The dribbles. So, oh, more.
If you need more, there's a big.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with this bag. I'm trying to carry this thing, and I kind of turn wide and I whack somebody. And I turn around the other direction trying to get out of the way, and I hit somebody else. Or I just get tired from carrying it and sore, and I'm hungry. And you've probably heard this phrase before, that hurt people hurt people. So when I find myself lashing out or being angry or hurting somebody even inside me, I know that it's probably that stuff in that bag that's hurting me. We want to quickly get rid of those bricks. We would really like to take those out of that bag and put it away. I think we even get the message that a good Christian considers it all pure joy. Thank you, James. This verse we love to hate. I should say I love to hate. And I should consider this all pure joy, that I put on a smile and carry on if my prayer life, my Bible study, and my church life are strong enough. But I think James, and I think a lot of the Bible, is saying something different. I think that it's saying that we should surrender to suffering. This is kind of my thesis statement for what I had to say today, that we should surrender to suffering. We should have patience, and that we have something to learn from lament. And I kind of think this passage in James might have some things to say about that. Maybe we're not supposed to just take the bricks out and move on. Okay, I really want to put this kind of suffering in the microwave and hurry it up. And my favorite internet preacher right now, Bob Goff, says, you're going to put it in the microwave and God's going to take it out of the microwave and put it in the crock pot. And I feel like he's telling me to slow this down. Don't hurry through this suffering. Put it in the crock pot. Maybe we're not supposed to just take the bricks out and move on. Psychology and experience has taught us that thoughts stuck inside your head start to rot. That's always a phrase I've told my boys. Anything that's in there, if it's stuck just in your head and nobody else knows about that, it's gonna rot. Sometimes that's even good thoughts, but a lot of bad stuff. Maybe we're supposed to get those bricks out and look at them and examine them and, you know, figure them out a lot. Maybe we're supposed to learn from lament. We can better, maybe God wants to walk with us in our weakness so that we can become stronger, so that we can better bear the burdens of another. So let's look at James 5, 1 through 12. That's my assigned portion, and I'm just going to read it straight through in the NIV. And as I read, try to make some sections as I read, like what would you call this section and this section and this section? Even though this doesn't really have the nice title sections, okay, like a lot of our Bibles have, try to think through that as I read. Now listen, you rich people, weep and wail because of the misery that is coming on you. Your wealth has rotted and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Look, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourselves in the day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the innocent one who was not opposing you. Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm because the Lord's coming is near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. Brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. All you need to say is a simple yes or no. Otherwise, you will be condemned. So suffering, the word came up once in that, didn't it? Here, I hope you are trying to make some sections. Here were my sections the first time I read that. Verses 1 through 6, there was a lot of stuff, warnings to the rich, weren't there? There's some stuff about quit doing that. You wealthy are wealthy because you've got this on the back, so by mistreating someone else, you know? And then there came some stuff about patience and endurance. And then that last little verse about keep your oaths, you know? So as I tried to wrap my head around what that meant for suffering and patience and endurance, I decided to read the passage in some other translations and other places, and I landed on the Message, which is not necessarily a translation, but a interpretation. But sometimes it really speaks to me the way that they interpret something that came in other words. So as I read just the very first verse of James 5, the one we just read in the NIV, this is how the Message says it. And a final word to you arrogant rich, take some lessons in lament. You'll need buckets for the tears when the crash comes upon you. And that lessons in lament, those two words, and he's kind of poking at the rich, you know, you need to learn from some suffering, I think is what he's saying. And that made me think, maybe in this passage of 12 verses, there's some lessons in lament. Maybe there's some things that I'm supposed to hang on to this for a while, because there's some lessons I need to learn from suffering so that I can carry this better. And so I kind of came up with, and with 6 things through these 12, and I'm just going to go through those 6 of some lessons I think are in from lament. My thesis is there again at the bottom. Surrender to suffering, have patience. You have something to learn from lament. Number 1, a shift from physical to spiritual. All of these are going to be shifts because at least in my life, there was a time before a heaviness, there was a time before, and there's a time after. And I will never be the same. So this is a shift from something to something else. A shift from physical to spiritual. So the rest of my passages are going to come from the Message. So slightly different take on the way they said that. Here in the beginning of James 5. Your money is corrupt. Your fine clothes stink. Your greedy luxuries are a cancer in your gut, destroying your life from within. You thought you were piling up wealth, but what you've piled up is judgment. So definitely people focusing on the physical parts of life. In suffering, you're really forced to do this in a way, I think. Sometimes it feels like your physical reality is so unbelievable and unjust and unreal. When prayers for change aren't answered, it's hard to know what to pray for. I definitely struggled with that, and I still do. But to start to focus on spiritual gifts, peace, courage, forgiveness, love, when the physical gifts of comfort and ease let you down. Pray for these gifts of the Spirit rather than for gifts of prosperity and comfort. Number 2, a shift from selfish ambition to see suffering in others. A shift from selfish ambition to see suffering in others. All the workers you've exploited and cheated cry out for judgment. The groans of the workers you used and abused are a roar in the ears of the master avenger. You've looted the earth and lived it up, but all you have to show for it is a fatter than usual corpse. In fact, what you've done is condemn and murder perfectly good persons who stand there and take it. This is an extreme example of selfish ambition, but pleasing myself in my own life is a bottomless pit. I have found that once I get what I want, it doesn't satisfy for very long, and I want more. That's the ugly cycle of self-focus. God tells us over and over to think of others. Even the world psychology tells people in suffering to find someone to serve, find someone outside of yourself to serve that takes your focus off of what you are going through. Story after story shows us the irony of self-focus, that it leads to unhappiness for me and hurt for others left in the wake. So when I'm suffering, maybe it forces me to shift focus to others when controlling my own happiness isn't really working. The shift, number 3, a shift of focus from today to tomorrow. And in this passage, it was talking about farmers. I grew up on a farm, a pig farm, and dry land, milo and wheat. So I love these agriculture analogies. Meanwhile, friends, wait patiently for the master's arrival. You see farmers do this all the time, waiting for their valuable crops to mature, patiently letting the rain do its slow but sure work. Be patient like that. Stay steady and strong. The master could arrive at any time. When controlling today isn't working, focus on hope for tomorrow. The story is not over yet when you are in suffering. You are at the beginning of the story or at the middle of your story, but you're not at the end of it. This life is temporary. This level of pain is temporary. It will change. Change is inevitable. It took our family years to find a new normal. We are not the same as we used to be, but we have found beauty in this new reality. But we could not say that for several years. Wait for tomorrow. You may be planting trees under which you will never sit. Number 4, shift from judging the suffering of others to compassion for suffering. Shift from judging the suffering of others to compassion for suffering. Friends, don't complain about each other. A far greater complaint could be lodged against you, you know. The judge is standing just around the corner. An unspoken message from my Bible school days was that the suffering of others was largely a consequence of their own behaviors. Either their own bad decisions or their lack of a strong faith, back to that joyful attitude I should always have, would explain most of the suffering in the world. But I don't see my grief and my suffering as any kind of trouble sign for my faith. I see a relationship now with my Lord that has room for complaint and suffering and lament as a real relationship, as an authentic place that I can go with those complaints. I have also learned from my students at LCU and a couple of really dear friendships made there, that their suffering is caused by a complex set of family and cultural problems that they did not sign up for, did not ask for, do not deserve. Really just the same way as my initial lack of suffering was due to a complex set of family and cultural bonuses that I got, that I did not sign up for and I did not deserve. Let your own suffering increase your compassion for others who are suffering. Number 5, a shift from working for blessings to living in the presence of God. A shift from working for blessings to living in the presence of God. Take the old prophets as your mentors. They put up with anything, went through everything, and never once quit, all the time honoring God. What a gift life is to those who stay the course. You've heard, of course, of Job's staying power, and you know how God brought it all together for him at the end. That's because God cares right down to the last detail. God's presence is the gift. As humans in these clay vessels, we have to worry about the stuff, don't we? We have to worry about the food, the clothes, the relationships, the people. We have to worry about the stuff because he gave us these clay vessels to live in. We hear the Old Testament stories of good behavior equals good stuff. But much of Scripture tells us that the real gift is God's presence. His desire to be with us in good times and in bad. He went to great lengths to be with us, didn't he? That's the whole story from the Old Testament to the New Testament is his desperation to be with us in so many different amazing ways. Isn't that what we really want? Someone to be with us? To not walk this alone? He did not make us to do it alone. Number 6, a shift from hiding your hurt to being vulnerable. a shift from hiding your hurt to being vulnerable. When I first read this last passage at the end in verse 12 of chapter 5 about keeping your oaths, that your yes be yes and your no be no, I kind of thought that's a weird little addition on there. But for this lesson of lament, I thought it fit just right. And since he knows, and since you know that he cares, let your language show it. Don't add words like, I swear to God, to your own words. Don't show your impatience by concocting oaths to hurry up God. I thought that was a really neat way to say that. Don't show your impatience by concocting oaths to hurry up God. Oh, microwave crock pot. Just say yes or no. Just say what is true. That way your language can't be used against you. When we hide our suffering, we can't comfort others in theirs. I definitely have a tendency to want to hide that and make things kind of look okay on the outside. When I have shared some of my story with my students at LCU, I have found connection with students who are suffering. And it just feels good to help carry this bag and know that I'm not alone. And I would not know that if I did not share some of that story. It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable, but it's okay to not be okay. If I learn these lessons, if I pray for God's presence in my journey, rather than for him to make my journey smooth, maybe I can carry these bricks. Maybe some of these bricks I can remove. I definitely think that there are bricks have different shelf lives, and we have different things we go through at different times. But surely God's presence will help me go toward suffering, to surrender to the lessons of lament. He wants to walk that journey with me so that I can walk it with someone else. And there's just too many places in the word that tell us that's how we feel God's presence is with each other. And we have to do that with each other and be those hands and feet for each other. I can't do that if I'm not able to carry this bag. You do not go alone. So my prayer for you is that you do not hurry your suffering or deny your suffering. Learn the lessons of lament. Surrender to it. Be patient. Apparently, even Jesus submitted to the lessons of suffering. Just Sunday, after this lesson was finished, I was reminded of this verse in Hebrews. Even though Jesus was God's son, he learned obedience from the things he suffered. Wow. Son of God, I don't think I would have, it's not something I keep on the front of my mind that Jesus needed to learn obedience. I kind of thought he probably came pretty naturally with that. He learned obedience from things he suffered. So I'm going to close going back to that verse at the beginning of James that I love to hate, and you might have already had a great lesson on this, but the message says to consider it a sheer gift, friends, when tests and challenges come at you from all sides. But really, if you just continue just a couple verses down to verse 4, James is finishing that up by saying, so don't try to get out of anything prematurely. Let it do its work so that you become mature and well-developed. I thank this room of mature and well-developed women who have raised me in these years of becoming a mom and a wife. And there's so many hearts in this room that have blessed me with your words and kindness through the years. Thank you.